Hello there, my name is Dylan, and today's review is going to be an expansion review. So if you've never ever played Time Stories, please jump in your nearest TARDIS, do some timey-wimey stuff, go back and actually watch some reviews or, actually go play Time Stories before you delve into this review, as this is really whether you should actually bother with this expansion or not. To get on with the review, this is going to be for the newest expansion, Estrella Drive, which brings our investigators into 1982, where we investigate a ghost mansion of sorts. So I'm going to be showing some shots from the Winchester Mystery House here in San Jose, California, because, well, I can't really show anything in the box. It's just about showing anything is going to be a spoiler. So enjoy some B-roll from the Winchester Mystery House rather than staring at my face the entire time. First of all, the first thing to know really is that this is Time Story's first mature rated expansion. Really what that entails is there's a much higher density of cursing than any previous expansion. I don't believe the gore violence is really any more so than the other expansions, but at least maybe the descriptions are far more graphic than they were before. There is some drug paraphernalia that you can see in some of the images and also you can actually use. And of course, there's also nudity. For me personally, a lot of this is all pretty tame in my opinion. The cursing is really just sort of a juvenile attempt at being mature. And sort of the nudity and the drug use again is sort of juvenile and in really the way it's presented. It's nothing all that great. So I don't really see this as much of mature as it is, there's stuff you may not like. Now for this review, I'm not really going to go into any of the mechanics. Now the mechanics of Time Stories, if you know, you're going to be rolling dice, you're going to be choosing characters that have sort of stats. Most of that is all the same in this expansion. There's really no sort of interesting twist in sort of the way you choose stats or anything like that. And if you've played any other Time Stories expansions before, you'll know that typically they have some sort of really cool puzzle to them or just sort of an interesting tale. This expansion of Time Stories takes place in 1982 Los Angeles. You're going to be investigating sort of a ghost mansion, but quickly you'll find out it's a little bit more than that. This mansion is home to a very significant event in American history. In fact, several movies are being made about it, including a Tarantino film. That's all I'm going to say on what you're actually dealing with, because if I say too much, you'll spoil it. But if you do the research and spoil it yourself, that's on you, not me. Now, the actual event that this expansion kind of portrays is definitely one I would say is a mature audience should kind of be aware of, because it is a pretty graphic event in American history and one that a lot of people may not be comfortable interacting with. Now, I'm just going to talk about the good stuff here. There are two good things about this expansion. I would say one is the twist about halfway through about what you're actually dealing with and what goes. I think it's pretty cool. Now, unfortunately, we kind of have seen something very similar before in two other expansions, so it's really nothing super new, but the way they do it here is a little bit new. Still, I thought it was kind of cool. It's definitely interesting. The other good part about this expansion, well, it's kind of a positive and a negative, is the puzzle at the end. Basically, this one's a little different, as in you don't really solve a puzzle per se, but there is a way to sort of complete the scenario and avoid doing a certain task that typically is pretty prevalent throughout Time Stories. My group never figured it out, and I like to look through the cards just to make sure we didn't miss anything important, and I really didn't see an obvious way to do that. Nonetheless, considering you do lose points at the end of the game if you do not do it that way, I assume there must be some way that I just really sort of didn't see. And that's kind of where that's a little bit of a negative, in that it's just really, really obtuse in the way you're supposed to do it, because I just clearly could not see a way to actually accomplish the entire mission while avoiding a certain task. Now kind of on to the bad, which I think is mostly the majority of this expansion, unfortunately. I think a large part of that has to do where this sort of falls in the timeline. The last expansion for me was Lumen Fide. Lumen Fide was basically like the end finale of a TV show that had been going on for about a year. It was full of some explosive reveals. There was 3 different endings to it. It was just crazy, phenomenal expansion. And then this expansion is like the brand new starting episode of a season that completely ignores everything that happened in the finale and just kind of continues on with its day. And that was really disappointing to me. I wanted to know about some of those big revelations that happened at the end of the last expansion. So why are they suddenly just thrown out the window? We don't have any idea what the consequences of one of those 3 endings are, depending on which one you got. And there's just a lot of loose threads hanging around, and nothing is ever brought up in this expansion. Now, if this expansion had been somewhere around the time of Marcy Case, or had been used as a replacement for Marcy Case, or somewhere in there, I think it would work just fine. But as a standalone, and considering it sort of was building up to something bigger, it just kind of drops the ball there. Also, I wasn't really impressed by the whole mature thing. The excess use of swearing wasn't really mature. The storyline itself, obviously what sort of event you're dealing with, that was sort of mature, and I did sort of like that. It was an interesting attempt to explore sort of an event like that, but at the same time I felt a lot of things were just clumsily executed. The drug use that you could potentially do was utterly pointless, really. Yes, it would give you a buff, which is kind of silly, but it had a big drawback at one point. But nonetheless, why was it there? It just wasn't really necessary. I'm going to keep this review pretty short. Mechanic-wise, nothing's really changed. It's still Time Stories. If you've played Time Stories, this is still Time Stories. Story-wise, I think it's a big sort of drop on the ball. It's not very good. It's really disappointing in that sort of regard. Though, if you were to play it earlier before playing sort of the big expansion like Lumen Fide, this could still be actually way more enjoyable than it was for me. All in all, I find this to be really the most skippable expansion of Time Stories since, say, Marcy Story. There's just not enough here to really justify the price of these expansions. Now, if you're going to use it as a replacement for Marcy expansion, or potentially play it right after Marcy Case or something like that, I think it would work. It's still skippable, but at least like you're not waiting on all these big revelations and hoping the story gets, more involved and knowing a lot of things. You're just going to kind of, play this story. And that's okay, because at least the role-playing aspects of Time Stories and kind of the situational base that you find yourself in still works pretty well in this expansion. That does it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere I'm out there. But if you didn't like it, please also leave a comment. I'm happy to listen to your feedback. Thank you. Goodbye. See you next game night.